The knife kissed Jasmine's thigh as Caleb trapped her between his body and the marble counter, his breath hot and furious against her lips. The cut on his eyebrow bled slowly, a single crimson line trailing down his temple, proof of the glass she'd smashed into him when he tried to lock her inside the penthouse again. "You never listen," he snarled, pressing closer, the cold steel tracing up her skin. "You never think," she shot back, lifting her chin until she could feel the anger radiating off him. "And I'm not something you get to cage. You're my wife," he hissed, "which makes you mine to deal with." Her pulse spiked not with fear, but with the dangerous current that lived between them, the same one sizzling now as his hand slid into her hair and yanked her head back. "I should ruin you," Caleb breathed, eyes dropping to her mouth. "Mark you, break you, damage you until no man would dare look at you." Jasmine's lips curved slowly, deliberately. "Then stop talking," she whispered, "and do it." For one suspended heartbeat, everything in him fractured: rage, hunger, restraint cracking at once. His hand trembled against her thigh, his mouth hovered over hers. Kiss or violence? Even he didn't seem to know which one he wanted more. Then, before he could decide, the world snapped. If you want to know how a man who swore he'd never touch his wife ended up pressed against her like he couldn't breathe without her, we have to go back. Back to the night Jasmine learned she no longer had a choice. Back to the moment she was traded to a monster who didn't want her, and couldn't stop wanting her anyway. The jet hummed beneath Jasmine's feet, the cabin drenched in polished leather and cold luxury, an unmistakable sign she was entering a world run by men who believed they were untouchable. She sat rigid across from her mother, Helen, watching the glittering lights of Atlanta shrink below them. "You're marrying him tonight," Helen muttered, refusing to meet her eyes. Jasmine didn't blink. "Marrying who, Mother?" "You know who." A breath, a tremble, a coward's silence. "Mafia boss Caleb Romano." The name hit Jasmine like a punch, but her voice stayed flat. "Who did you owe this time?" Helen hesitated too long. "Austin." He crossed a line. "Jasmine, the Romano family gave us one option." "One option," Jasmine repeated, her jaw tightening. "Sell me off like spare property?" Silence answered her. 6 hours later, she was walking down an aisle in a cathedral she'd never seen before, wearing a dress she didn't choose, toward a man who barely glanced at her as though he were assessing a weapon rather than a wife. Caleb Romano didn't smile, didn't offer a hand, didn't pretend this was anything but a transaction. At the reception, his voice was low, clipped, lethal. "Let's be clear," he said, eyes cold and silver beneath the crystal chandeliers. "You'll be my wife in public, a ghost in private. I won't touch you. You won't tempt me." Jasmine forced a slow breath. "And you assume I care?" A single flicker crossed his expression: surprise or warning. "You will follow my rules," he said. "Not even a little," she answered. And just like that, the war began. But even then, before the boundaries she set, before the ones he shattered, before the night the knife touched her skin, neither of them understood what this marriage would turn them into. Because hatred has a way of evolving. Into obsession, into danger, into something neither of them could walk away from. And this is where their story truly begins. Before we continue, please give this video a thumbs up if you've been enjoying this so far. Subscribe for more intriguing stories, and at the end, tell me what part of the story stood out for you and what country you're watching from. The jet hummed beneath Jasmine's feet like a living thing, a quiet monster disguised in polished steel and luxury leather. Outside the windows, the night sky stretched endless and black, a perfect reflection of the future being forced upon her. Her mother, Helen, sat across from her, wringing her hands until the skin reddened. Not because she felt guilty, not because she cared, but because she feared the consequences for herself. Jasmine watched her with steady, burning eyes. "Tell me again," she said, voice flat, "why we're on a private jet headed God knows where, with no luggage, no plan, and no explanation." Helen inhaled shakily. "Jasmine, you must understand. Try me." A beat of silence. Then, "It was Austin's debt." Jasmine's spine straightened. Of course it was. Her brother's name still rang with exhaustion. What did he do this time? Helen stared at her clasped hands. He gambled. Lost everything. More than everything. How much? 3.7 million. Jasmine blinked slowly. In dollars? In favors, her mother whispered. The worst currency. And the people he owes, Jasmine said, her tone sharpening. They're the ones who own this jet. Helen nodded miserably. The Romano family. The name hit Jasmine like a cold wave, not because she feared them, but because she knew the world they controlled. Mafia, but not the sloppy kind. The kind whose power seeped into entire cities. The kind whose leaders were raised on silence and blood. Why am I here? Jasmine asked, though her gut already twisted with the answer. Helen's face crumpled. Because they don't want money. A pause. They want you. Jasmine let the words settle like poison. So you sold me, she said. No. Helen reached forward instinctively, but Jasmine leaned back. I didn't have a choice. You always had choices, Jasmine said coldly. You just never chose me. Her mother's breath hitched. They said the family would be spared if you agreed. Agreed? Jasmine barked a bitter laugh. You told them I agreed? You'll be taken care of, Helen whispered, as if that mattered. Protected. The Romano heir is wealthy, powerful. He won't mistreat you. Jasmine's jaw clenched. Who is he? Caleb Romano. The name hit like a fist. She had heard whispers, stories, rumors spread by men who wished they were as feared as him. A ghost in tailored suits, a weapon wrapped in beauty, a storm raised by the Romano bloodline. Jasmine swallowed the rising dread. And I'm supposed to marry him? Helen's eyes glistened. Tonight. The jet dipped lower, city lights rising beneath them like a bed of diamonds sharpened into blades. The cathedral was a palace carved from stone, ancient, enormous, and lit with gold that threw shadows like warnings. Jasmine stepped out of the car in the simple silk dress someone had laid out for her on the jet. She had refused makeup, refused perfume, refused to pretend this was anything but a transaction. Inside, hundreds of strangers turned to stare, all of them dressed in black, all of them powerful enough to pretend this was normal. The air smelled of incense and bloodline. Then she saw him, Caleb Romano, the man she was being traded to. He stood at the altar like a monolith tall. Still, jaw carved from stone, silver eyes cold enough to freeze fire. His dark hair was slicked back neatly, revealing sharp cheekbones and a mouth that looked like it forgot how to smile years ago. A breathtaking kind of lethal. Jasmine refused to look away. Caleb, however, barely glanced at her. His eyes skimmed her once, not with desire, not with curiosity, but with calculation, as if she were a number, not a bride. The priest began speaking. Voices blurred. Jasmine didn't hear the vows, didn't feel Caleb's hand take hers because he didn't offer it. He simply nodded when the priest declared them married, as though sealing a business contract. The kiss was worse. A brush, a ghost, a formality, nothing more. Jasmine stared at him afterward, her voice low enough for only him to hear. That was pathetic. His eyes flickered the first crack. The reception hall was filled with music, laughter, expensive wine, and people who toasted to alliances while ignoring the girl who had just been signed into captivity. Jasmine stood by a window, watching the city glitter below. Caleb approached from behind, silent as gravity. Mrs. Romano, he said, voice smooth and cool. Let's be clear. She didn't turn around. Oh good. A lecture. I was worried marriage would change you. His jaw tightened. She could feel it even without seeing his face. You will play my wife in public, he said. Attend events. Smile when necessary. Speak when spoken to. Like a well-trained pet. He ignored the jab. In private, you will stay out of my way. Jasmine finally turned to face him. His height forced her to tilt her chin upward, but she refused to shrink. That's cute. You think you get to dictate my existence. His eyes hardened. I won't touch you. I won't share a bed with you. I won't be tempted by you. That last part sounds like your problem, she said. He stepped closer, the faintest heat radiating off his body. You misunderstand. I'm offering you freedom. Freedom? Her laugh was soft, dangerous. You call this freedom? Better this. he murmured. "Than the other reasons a woman ends up married to a man like me." Jasmine's heartbeat kicked, but her gaze didn't waver. "How comforting," she said dryly, a threat disguised as generosity. His voice dipped lower. "Just follow the rules." She smiled, bright, sarcastic, reckless. "I don't follow orders." Something in his expression flickered annoyance, interest, maybe both. Jasmine stepped closer, until her breath touched his throat. "You want a quiet ghost of a wife?" she whispered. "Too bad." Then she brushed past him, leaving him standing rigid in the shadows. And that was the moment Caleb should have known. The war had already begun, and Jasmine had no intention of losing. The first morning as Mrs. Romano started with silence, thick, suffocating, intentional silence. Caleb moved through the penthouse like a ghost carved from discipline and ice. Jasmine woke to the sound of his footsteps, measured and distant, as though she was nothing more than background noise. Fine. If he wanted distance, she'd set the entire house on fire with it. She tied a silk robe around her waist, the fabric soft as sin against her skin. She didn't bother closing it properly, a loose knot, a teasing gap down the center, the slightest shift away from revealing everything. Deliberate, controlled, a declaration of her own rules. She walked into the kitchen just as Caleb ended a call. He didn't look up immediately, but when he did, his jaw flexed so sharply she almost applauded. The robe had slipped off one shoulder. Jasmine made no effort to fix it. "Put something on," he said, voice low, almost strained. "This is something," she answered calmly, brushing past him to reach for a glass. Her fingers grazed the counter. Her robe shifted again. Caleb inhaled sharply, a breath he didn't mean to take. Good. Let him choke on it. Jasmine left the bathroom door open that afternoon. The steam rolled into the hallway, fogging the mirrors and the glass panels. She hummed as she showered, loud and sweet, and knowing he could hear every note. Caleb walked past once, paused. The shadow of his figure reflected faintly in the fogged glass. He didn't enter, didn't speak, but the way the air shifted, the way silence thickened, he noticed, and that was enough. By evening, Caleb was in the middle of a meeting in the living room, 4 men in suits, discussing business. Jasmine had no interest in respecting. She hopped onto the marble counter, crossing her legs slowly, letting the robe slide open around her thighs. Every pair of eyes flicked to her, except Caleb's. He refused to look, which meant he was fighting himself. She dipped a finger into her drink, licking it slowly, pretending boredom. One of the men choked on his words. Caleb didn't turn around, but his fist tightened around his whiskey glass until hairline cracks formed. "Jasmine," he said without looking. "Go upstairs." "Why?" she asked lightly. "Am I distracting you?" One of the men coughed violently. Caleb closed his eyes for a long second. "You know exactly why." She grinned and slid off the counter, brushing past him, her shoulder grazing his arm. He didn't move, but the tremor in his breath gave him away. Later that night, she sat on the couch, long legs stretched out, lotioning them slowly, luxuriously, shamelessly. The vanilla scent filled the room as she massaged it into her thigh, then higher, her robe slipping dangerously. Caleb froze in the doorway. His eyes snapped to her legs first, then her hand, then the place she knew he didn't want to look at but couldn't stop himself from seeing. "What did I tell you about covering myself?" She raised a brow. "Not my style." He swallowed hard. That was new. Caleb Romano didn't swallow. He commanded, ordered, intimidated. But Jasmine was unraveling him 1 inch at a time. "Jasmine," he tried again, his voice lower, rougher. "Stop this." "Stop what?" she asked innocently, sliding her hand up her thigh again. "Existing, tempting me." There it was. The first honest thing he'd said since their vows. Jasmine leaned back, lips curving wickedly. "Then don't look." But he did. He always did. By the 3rd day, the penthouse felt electric with unsaid things. Jasmine turned up the music when he worked, left lights on in every room, wore dresses that weren't technically too short but short enough to make Caleb stop mid-sentence when she walked by. She was the storm he couldn't contain, and he was the fire she wasn't afraid to approach. During breakfast, He reached for a mug, and it shattered in his hand. He hissed as blood trickled down his palm. "You're bleeding," Jasmine said. "Stay back." She took a step forward anyway. "I wasn't going to touch you." He shot her a look she felt low in her stomach. That's the problem. That night, she lay awake in the guest room, the uncomfortable one he'd forced her into, far from his. She didn't know what she expected. Guilt? Regret? She felt neither. Instead, she heard something. A sound. Low. Painful. Held back for too long. The shower in Caleb's room was running. At first, she thought nothing of it until she heard it again. A groan. A rough one. His voice strained as though fighting himself. Her name. Jasmine. Her pulse spiked. Another sound followed, unmistakable, rhythmic, desperate. The sound of a man losing every ounce of control he had battled to keep. Her breath caught. Heat rushing into her face and chest. He was touching himself. For her. Because of her. Saying her name like she was the sin he couldn't outrun. Jasmine covered her mouth, stunned. A slow, triumphant smile bloomed across her lips. "So the Ice King melts," she whispered. In that moment, she realized something dangerous, something that changed the entire game. Caleb Romano wanted her more than he feared her, and she wasn't done breaking him yet. He moaned her name. Jasmine lay there, pulse thrashing, the sound echoing in her mind like a secret she wasn't supposed to hear. Caleb Romano, the man carved from ice and violence, unraveling alone in the shower because of her. A slow, wicked smile tugged at her lips. If he thought she was done, he had no idea who he married. The next morning, Jasmine stepped out of the shower with a single intention: push him to the edge and watch him fight not to fall. She wrapped a towel loosely around her body, barely tied, barely holding, and stepped into the hallway just as Caleb emerged from his study. Their eyes met, and then the towel slipped. It didn't fall completely, just enough. Enough to reveal the slope of her breast, the curve of her hip, a long line of dripping skin that glistened under the hallway light. Caleb froze like someone had shot him. His hands fisted instantly, his jaw locked, his eyes cold, silver, always controlled, darkened into something feral as they dragged over her, slow and hungry. The towel fell an inch more. He inhaled sharply, a sound she felt in her stomach. "Jasmine," he said, voice rougher than she'd ever heard it. "Pick it up." "Why?" she asked softly, making no move to fix it. His nostrils flared, his throat worked. Every muscle in his body tensed like he was 1 second away from snapping. Then he spun around and walked away so fast it almost made her laugh. But she heard it. The lock click, the sharp, ragged breath, the low, broken, groan her name. Oh, he was losing control. Perfect. Jasmine intensified the war. Every morning she accidentally chose the smallest pair of shorts she owned. Thin, soft, barely clothing. She'd stretch in the living room with slow, deliberate movements, aware of Caleb watching from the kitchen. When she bent forward, she heard his breath catch. When she arched her back, he swore under his breath. Every single time. At night, she played soft music in the dimly lit living room. Nothing loud, just enough bass to move her hips slowly, sensually, like she was dancing for her own pleasure. But she knew he could see her from the glass wall of his study. At first, he pretended not to look. Then he pretended not to stare. Then he stopped pretending altogether. The desire in his gaze wasn't subtle anymore. It was violent. On Thursday, she walked into the kitchen wearing only one of his shirts, white, crisp, far too large, hanging off one shoulder. She reached up for a glass. The shirt rose. A lot. Caleb choked on his own breath. "Jasmine," he said, sounding almost pained. "Stop." "Stop what?" she asked, letting the shirt fall lower on one side. "Being like this." "Like what?" He swallowed. "Like you want me to touch you." She stepped forward. "Maybe I do." He stepped back like she was fire. By the 5th day, he was no longer composed. He hovered. He stalked. He watched her like a man tormented by his own body. Once, Jasmine woke to the softest sound, the creak of the floorboard near her door. Her eyes stayed closed, breath steady. Caleb stood in the doorway, watching her, not touching, not speaking, just staring at her sleeping form for a long, tense, tortured minute. Then he walked away. Another night, she caught him closing his study blinds because he couldn't keep himself from watching her dance. He avoided her during the day only for his eyes to find her in every reflection, every window, every room they passed through. Caleb Romano was losing a war he never agreed to fight, and Jasmine was winning beautifully. On the 7th night, Jasmine stepped out of her room in a dress she knew would detonate him. Black, tight, backless, slit nearly to her hip, neckline low enough to ruin kingdoms. She walked down the hallway with the slow confidence of a woman who understood her power. Caleb appeared from around the corner and stopped dead in his tracks. His eyes traveled down her body like he was memorizing every inch. His jaw flexed, his hands curled into fists so tight the veins bulged. "Where are you going?" he asked, voice dangerously calm. "Out," she said lightly, adjusting the strap of her dress. "With who?" "Myself." "No." She raised a brow. "No?" He stepped closer, burning with jealousy, with rage, with want so sharp it could cut glass. "You're not leaving this house dressed like that," he said, each word trembling with barely suppressed desire. "Why?" she asked, tilting her chin. "Afraid someone else might look at me?" His eyes snapped to hers, dark, furious, hungry. "Jasmine," he whispered through clenched teeth, "if you walk out that door, I won't be able to control myself anymore." She smiled slowly, wickedly. "Good." Caleb's breath hitched, and that was the moment he finally cracked. Caleb didn't move when Jasmine took another step toward the front door. He just stood there, a wall of muscle, fury, and barely contained hunger blocking her way with the full force of his body. "You're not leaving," he said quietly. Quietly was always worse with him. Jasmine's fingers brushed the doorknob, her black dress shimmering under the hall light. "Move, Caleb." He didn't. His hand came up, bracing the door beside her head, caging her in. The pine spice scent of him wrapped around her like a warning. "You're not leaving like that," he corrected, voice scraping the air. "Like what?" she shot back. "Like a woman who owns her body?" His jaw flexed. "Like a woman begging to be touched." Her breath caught not because he was wrong, but because he finally said it out loud. Jasmine pushed on the handle again. He slammed his palm over hers, stopping her effortlessly. "Caleb." "No." His voice dropped lower. "Not tonight. Not in that dress. Not looking like—" His eyes dragged down her body, slow and tortured. "That." She almost laughed. "What? Tempting?" "Dangerous," he growled. "For both of us." She tried to slide past him. He stepped right with her. She moved left. He mirrored. "Are you seriously blocking the door?" she demanded. His eyes narrowed. "I told you you're not leaving this house dressed like this. It's a dress, Caleb. Not a crime scene." He leaned down until their foreheads nearly touched. "It will be a crime scene if someone looks at you the wrong way. Are you jealous?" she asked sweetly. His nostrils flared. "I don't get jealous." "Liar." She pushed his chest hard, intending to slip past, but he caught her wrists and pinned them above her head against the door so fast the air left her lungs. Her back pressed the wood. His body pinned her front. Heat slammed into her from every direction. "Stop playing games," he ground out, breath hot against her mouth. "You don't know what you're doing." "I know exactly what I'm doing," she whispered, lifting her chin so their lips almost brushed. "I'm proving you want me." His breath stuttered. And then, he moved. One hand slid down her arm, down her side, gripping her waist like he was anchoring himself to reality. His other hand braced beside her head again, caging her in fully. His chest touched hers with every furious breath he took. "Jasmine," he murmured, voice ragged. "If I touch you again, I won't stop." The warning made her knees weaken, not in fear and absolute desire. "Then prove it," she whispered. "Or stop pretending." He stared at her like she was something he wanted to devour and destroy in the same breath. Then he dipped his head, mouth barely brushing hers. Barely. The whisper of contact was enough to punch heat through her stomach. She arched up into him, dress shifting higher, thigh pressing between his. Caleb's breath shattered. His hand slid to her hip. His thumb traced the line of exposed skin. His lips hovered over hers, trembling with restraint he didn't possess. "Caleb," she breathed. He cursed low, broken, and for one wild second, she thought he would finally lose the last thread of control. He tilted her chin up. His nose brushed hers. His mouth hovered right there. Jasmine felt his lips part. He was going to kiss her. He was going to. No. He tore himself back like she burned him. She gasped at the sudden cold when his body left hers. He turned away, hands gripping his hair, chest heaving like he was fighting himself, losing. "I can't," he said hoarsely. "Not like this." "Not like what?" she snapped. "When you want me?" He didn't answer. Jasmine stepped forward, fury boiling. "Say it, Caleb." Silence. "Say you want me." He lowered his head. His voice was barely audible. "I already want you too much." Her heart slammed against her ribs. He looked like he hated himself for the confession. Jasmine, still breathless, still burning, stepped closer and shoved him. "You don't get to start something and then pull away. Jasmine, you don't get to cage me, touch me, breathe me in, and then pretend this is nothing." He turned to face her fully. "I'm trying to protect you." "From what?" she hissed. "Yourself?" "Exactly." She stared at him, at the man who desired her so intensely he was shaking with it, yet still chained himself. And something inside her snapped. Before she could think, her hand flew. The slap cracked through the hallway. His head jerked slightly. His lips split a thin red line. He touched the blood with 2 fingers. Then he looked at her. Slowly, darkly, desire and danger mixing until she couldn't tell them apart. "Careful," he whispered, voice like a low growl. "Very careful." The warning wasn't fear. It was a promise. And Jasmine smiled, slow, defiant, victorious. Because the monster she was waking in him was finally opening its eyes. The slap changed everything. Caleb hadn't touched her since that night, hadn't cornered her, hadn't caged her, hadn't let himself get close, but he watched her, always watched her. Jasmine felt his eyes like a hand around her throat, so she decided to tighten the noose. If he wanted distance, she would give him hell instead. She started with something small, a dinner, then 2, then 5. She left the penthouse in silk dresses he hated, heels that clicked like defiance, lips painted in colors she knew he would taste if he ever let himself break. Caleb said nothing, but his jaw clenched every time she passed him in the hallway. She moved like smoke slipping out, returning late, humming softly as she walked past him. He stared, always stared, which is why she posted the first picture. A selfie with a man she barely knew, Anthony, standing just a little too close behind her at the restaurant bar. His hand wasn't touching her, but the angle made it look like it was. She uploaded it with a caption, "Good company tonight." Caleb saw it instantly. She heard the low, guttural curse from his study. Her smile was lethal. The next night, she came home late. So late, Caleb was pacing the living room, phone in hand, tie loosened, hair disheveled, the rare, dangerous kind of disheveled that only showed when he'd lost his composure. Jasmine paused at the door, letting him take her in. Her dress was wrinkled, her lipstick slightly smudged, and the most important detail, she smelled like another man's cologne. Caleb froze, his fists curled. "What is that?" he asked quietly. "On your skin?" She stepped inside, letting the scent trail into the room. "Oh," Anthony hugged me goodbye. The glass he was holding shattered in his hand. Blood dripped down his wrist. Jasmine blinked. "Caleb, you're bleeding." "Did." His voice was ice cracking. "He..." A step closer. "Touch you?" She tilted her head. Would it matter if he did? The fire that flashed across his face was almost frightening. Almost. But Jasmine wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid of how much she wanted him to break. The next escalation was simple cruelty. She brought Anthony to the penthouse. Not inside, she wasn't reckless, but she let him walk her to the foyer, linger too long, compliment her too loudly. She knew Caleb could hear every word. Anthony brushed Jasmine's shoulder. She laughed softly, and then Caleb appeared at the top of the stairs, silent, still, predatory. Anthony nearly choked. Hi. You can leave," Caleb said without looking at him. Anthony fled so fast, Jasmine almost felt bad. Almost. She turned to Caleb, folding her arms. He's sweet. His eyes snapped to hers. He's dead if he touches you again. Why? She mocked. Because you own me? Because someone has to keep you alive, he snarled. Alive? She laughed. What does Anthony hugging me have to do with staying alive? He hesitated. Then came the reveal. His voice was low, furious, and raw. I have men following you. Jasmine's blood chilled. What? I assigned them the day we married. Because you don't trust me? Because the world is hunting me, he said, stepping closer. And that means they're hunting you. The hallway spun around her. You put me under surveillance. No. His eyes burned. I put you under protection. My protection. Jasmine's heart thudded painfully. He wasn't lying. There was no arrogance in his tone. No dominance. Just fear. Rage. Possession restrained by a thread. Why didn't you tell me? She whispered. Because, he growled. I didn't want you to know how much I think about you. Her breath hitched. The space between them crackled like a live wire. He stepped closer. Jasmine didn't move. Couldn't. His hand lifted slowly, trembling, brushing a strand of her hair behind her ear. Jasmine, he murmured, voice shaking. You make me insane. Good, she whispered. His jaw clenched. I shouldn't want you, but you do. His eyes darkened further. He leaned in, stopping when their lips were a breath apart. Jasmine's heart beat against her ribs. Her hands lifted to his chest. She rose on her toes. Caleb. Something in him broke. He grabbed her waist. She gasped. His mouth crashed into hers. A violent, starving, furious kiss. She moaned into him, fingers curling in his shirt, pulling him closer. He kissed her like a man drowning. She kissed him like someone who wanted to pull him down with her. But then, he tore himself away, breath ragged, forehead pressed to hers. Damn it, he whispered. I can't do this. Why not? Her voice trembled. Because if I keep kissing you, he said, stepping back like the distance could save him. I won't stop. Jasmine's pulse thundered. His lips were swollen, chest rising and falling, eyes wild. And for the first time, she saw it clearly. He wasn't afraid of wanting her. He was afraid of what he'd do once he had her. Jasmine didn't mean to sneak out again. No, that was a lie. She meant every step, every breath, every click of her heels as she walked out the door after Caleb had forbidden it. The art show was packed, loud, glittering with expensive perfume and dangerous men. She loved it, but she felt the eyes first. Not admiration, not curiosity, hunting. 3 men in dark suits, watching her too carefully, too intentionally. She left early, and she shouldn't have. The penthouse lights were off when she returned. Caleb wasn't the type to wait in doorways, but tonight he was there, standing in shadow, dripping blood. Not sweat, not rain, blood. It streaked down his forearms, spattered his shirt, one smear across his jaw. He looked like something pulled out of a nightmare, or created by one. Caleb? She breathed. He didn't speak. Not at first. He just walked toward her, slow and silent. Like every step was an effort not to explode. Where were you? He asked finally. His voice didn't sound human. An art show, she said softly. You told me nothing. He kept walking. She kept backing up, until her back hit the marble counter. Caleb stopped inches from her, chest rising and falling like he'd run through hell to get home. His hand reached behind her. Her breath caught. He wasn't reaching for her. He was reaching for something on the counter. A knife. He lifted it, the blade catching the light, not shaking, not hesitant. Controlled. Terrifyingly controlled. You shouldn't have gone, he said. You don't own me, she whispered. His eyes flared. I killed for you tonight. Hair pulls slammed. What? Men were following you, he growled, stepping closer, pressing the counter edge into her lower back. Rival men. Men who know your face. Men who wanted to take you, use you, carve a message into your skin. Her heart thudded painfully. Caleb, I killed them. Soft, deadly, like confessing the weather. I killed them for you. He lifted the knife, pressing the cold flat side against her thigh. Not slicing. Teasing. Threatening. Her breath stuttered. I could kill you too, he murmured, dragging the blade higher. You keep pushing, testing, running into danger like you're untouchable. I'm not afraid of you, she whispered. You should be. Then prove it. He stilled, the knife pressed to her hip now, barely restrained. You don't mean that, he rasped. Yes, I do. His jaw clenched. Do not tempt me. You think this scares me? Jasmine hissed. You think you scare me? Jasmine. Then do it, she whispered, leaning into the blade. Kill me. Hurt me. Break me. Do something. His control snapped. Not outwardly, inwardly, like a storm ripping through his chest. He grabbed her thigh with one hand, the knife still trapped between them, breath shaking as he leaned close enough that his forehead touched hers. You have no idea, he whispered, voice raw. What you do to me. Tell me. He breathed out, pained, tortured, undone. Every night. He confessed against her mouth. I hear you through the walls. She froze. Every sound, he continued. Every whisper. Every breath. Every moan. Her pulse exploded. I hear you touch yourself. His lips brushed hers without kissing. I hear you whisper my name. She swallowed hard. He wasn't done. I've wanted you since the moment you walked down that aisle, he said, voice near breaking. I wanted you even when I promised I wouldn't touch you. Her breath trembled. I watch you because I have to. His fingers dug into her waist. Because every man in this city wants to hurt me by taking you. She stared at him, chest rising and falling. You're obsessed, she whispered. He didn't deny it. You make me lose control, he murmured, thumb brushing her trembling lower lip. And that makes you the most dangerous thing in my world. The knife was still between them, cold, waiting. Jasmine leaned in, lips almost touching his. You want me broken, she whispered. Then break me. Something inside him shattered. The knife clattered to the floor. His hand slammed to the counter, caging her in completely. Jasmine. He breathed, eyes wild, desperate, starved. I can't stop anymore. Then don't. And that was the moment he lost the war he'd been fighting from day one. Caleb crushed his mouth to hers with a violence that tasted like 3 months of restraint combusting all at once. Her hands tangled in his hair. His body pinned her to the counter. And everything, every threat, every tease, every denial ignited into something cataclysmic. The man who swore he hated her finally claimed her like he'd been dying to. Caleb didn't want her to go. He didn't bother hiding it this time, didn't cloak it in coldness or orders. He simply stood in the doorway of their bedroom, still half-wrecked from the night he finally kissed her, and said, Jasmine, please, don't go. A plea, not a command, not a threat. A shudder of something dangerously close to fear slipped through his voice. Jasmine froze, mascara wand in hand. It's a gala, Caleb. A charity event. It's a trap, he said, stepping closer. I can feel it. Every instinct I have is, you don't control my life, she cut in. I'm trying to keep you alive, he snapped. Well, maybe, she whispered, turning to face him. I'm tired of being hidden. He closed his eyes, jaw tight, and she walked out. The ballroom looked like something carved out of starlight chandeliers dripping crystal fire, silk gowns sweeping across marble floors, violins filling the air with soft, glittering notes. Maya and Gabriella flanked Jasmine, their smiles bright, unaware of the storm she'd left behind. You sure you're okay? Maya whispered. You look tense. I'm fine, Jasmine lied, but a part of her felt watched. A prickle at the back of her neck, a chill in the middle of warmth. She forced herself to breathe. This was supposed to be normal. She hadn't had normal since the day she married a man made of knives. It happened just as she reached for a glass of champagne. Pop. A single, sharp crack split the music. The violinist froze. Guests turned. Someone screamed. Then, rat-a-tat-tat. Gunfire erupted like thunder. Get down! Gabriella shrieked, pulling Jasmine behind a banquet table. Chaos swallowed the ballroom in seconds, shattering glass, bodies hitting marble, screams echoing off crystal chandeliers. Maya pulled at Jasmine's arm. "We have to move, Jas. We have to." But Jasmine's eyes were locked on the balcony above. 3 men, black suits, silencers attached, guns pointed directly at her. Not at the crowd. Her. "Jasmine Romano," one of them shouted over the chaos. "Boss's orders." Her blood turned to ice. Not Caleb's. Someone else. Someone worse. Bullets tore through the table. Wood splintered. Fabric ripped. Jasmine crawled across the marble, breath ragged, dress tearing at the slit, hands slipping in spilled champagne and blood. "Maya!" she screamed as her friend grabbed her wrist. "We have to run." They sprinted toward the back exit, dodging falling guests, overturned chairs, bodies. Another shot tore past Jasmine's shoulder. She stumbled. Maya dragged her. And then, a figure slammed into the assassins from behind. A blur of black suit, silver eyes, and lethal, monstrous rage. Caleb. He wasn't supposed to be here. He wasn't invited. He wasn't on the guest list. He came because he knew. Because his instincts were right. Because she walked out on him and straight into a death sentence. He dropped the first gunman with a bullet to the head. Snapped the second's neck so fast Jasmine heard the crack from across the room. The third fled toward the side corridor. Caleb chased. Jasmine ran after them, lungs burning, heart slamming. The corridor was darker, quieter, the chaos muffled behind thick walls. She heard voices ahead. "You stupid bastard," someone snarled. "She weakens you. She makes you sloppy." Ash, Caleb's cousin. Jasmine stopped dead. Ash stepped out of the shadows, gun aimed at Caleb's heart. "You're losing your edge," Ash spat. "Everyone sees it." The Romano king brought to his knees by a woman. Caleb's voice was cold steel. "You sent men to kill my wife." "She's a weakness," Ash snapped. "She'll get you killed. So I'm eliminating the problem." Jasmine's breath hitched. "I'm right here, you coward." Ash turned his gun on her. And Caleb. He moved like a demon unleashed. Ash fired. Caleb tackled Jasmine into the wall, shielding her body with his. The bullet tore through his shoulder. She felt the impact through him, felt his body stagger, felt his breath shatter. "Caleb!" she screamed, grabbing him, but he pushed her behind him. His wound didn't slow him. It fueled him. He lung it. Ash got off one more shot, missed, and then Caleb slammed him into the opposite wall, fist crashing into his face with a sound that didn't belong in the presence of chandeliers. "You touched what's mine," Caleb hissed, voice shaking with fury and pain. "You tried to kill her." Ash laughed, blood dripping down his chin. "You're pathetic. She's turned you into a—" Caleb didn't let him finish. He pulled the gun from Ash's hand, pressed it to his cousin's forehead, and shot him without blinking. Ash's body dropped. The hallway went silent. Jasmine stood frozen, chest heaving, dress torn, hair wild, heart pounding so loud she thought it might break her ribs. Caleb turned toward her, his shirt soaked in blood, his shoulder still bleeding, his breath harsh, his eyes wild, devastated, relieved. His voice was a wrecked whisper. "I told you not to go." She stepped forward, shaking. "You saved me. I always will," he said, taking her face in his bloody hands. "Even if it kills me." Her throat tightened, and in that moment, surrounded by bodies and gun smoke and the man who destroyed everything to reach her, Jasmine realized he didn't kill his cousin out of strategy. He killed him out of love. A dark, violent, unstoppable love. The moment the gunshot dust settled, Caleb didn't let anyone else touch her. Not medics, not his men, not even Maya or Gabriella, who watched from behind police tape with wide, horrified eyes. He grabbed Jasmine by the waist firm, near desperate, and pulled her into the back of the armored car waiting at the curb. The door slammed shut. The driver sped off. Only then did she feel him shake. Caleb Romano, the man who murdered his own blood without blinking, sat beside her with blood-soaked knuckles trembling against her thigh. "Caleb," she whispered. He didn't look at her. His jaw was clenched too tightly, his breath uneven, his shoulder wound bleeding through his shirt, but his hand, large, warm, shaking, never left her. "I almost lost you tonight," he finally rasped. "You didn't," she whispered. He shook his head sharply. "You don't understand. I'm not supposed to care like this. I'm not supposed to feel anything this deep, this violent, this," he swallowed, "this dangerous." Jasmine stared. "You think I make you dangerous? You make me more dangerous," he said, turning to her, eyes wild, silver like a storm ready to split open. "You make me reckless, unhinged. I killed my cousin for touching you. I didn't think, I didn't plan. I just—" He broke off, breath hard, chest heaving. "I don't lose control, Jasmine," he whispered. "Ever. Except when it comes to you." She reached for his hand. His fingers clamped around hers instantly, like he needed the anchor to stay alive. "I'd kill for you too," she whispered. His eyes snapped to hers. Something inside him fractured, cracked wide open, and the man who always held himself together finally didn't. He pulled her into his lap, gripping her hips like he was terrified she'd vanish. Jasmine cupped his jaw, her thumb brushing the blood drying at the corner of his mouth. "Caleb," she breathed, "you saved me. You're the only woman," he whispered, voice shaking with the force of it, "I ever wanted to ruin." Her heart stopped, then thundered. She kissed him softly just once, slow and grounding. He inhaled like he'd been drowning and she was oxygen. The car stopped, but Caleb didn't let go. He carried her inside the penthouse, ignoring the pain in his shoulder, ignoring everyone around them. His men stepped aside immediately. They knew better than to interfere. He didn't stop walking until they were on the top floor, the cold night wind sweeping in from the open balcony. The city sprawled below them, glittering lights, distant sirens, the hum of traffic far beneath their feet. Caleb stood behind her, hands sliding from her hips to her waist, pulling her against him with a possessive hunger he didn't bother hiding anymore. "Look," he murmured, voice low against her neck. "The city thinks I'm untouchable, untamed, unbroken." His lips brushed her shoulder. "They don't know you're the one who brought me to my knees." Jasmine's breath trembled. He lifted her carefully, effortlessly, despite the bullet wound setting her on the balcony railing. It was dangerous, reckless, possessive, in a way that made her thighs clench and her pulse roar. Her legs wrapped instinctively around his waist for balance. Caleb smirked, thumbs brushing the sides of her thighs. "There she is," he murmured. "My chaos." He leaned in, kissing the curve of her neck with a hunger that made her grip his shoulders. "I'll ruin you," he whispered against her skin. "I know," she breathed. "But you'll ruin me first." Jasmine's heart throbbed, because it was true. She had turned a monster into a man who bled for her. She had turned a Mafia boss into someone who begged, who killed, who loved with a violence that terrified him. She wasn't just surviving him anymore. She was changing him. And she realized something dark, something thrilling. She wasn't afraid. Not of him. Not of the world he ruled. Not of the danger that came with loving a monster. Because she wasn't the same woman who walked down the aisle months ago. She had teeth now. Fire. Shadows in her chest that didn't exist before Caleb. Jasmine met his gaze, silver burning into brown. "I'm not yours because you married me," she whispered. "No, I'm yours because I choose you." His grip tightened, breath catching like her words had hit something vital inside him. "And you're mine," she added softly. His forehead dropped to hers. "Yes," he murmured. "I am." The city wind whipped around them, cold and sharp, but Jasmine felt nothing but heat, heat from his hands, his breath, his presence wrapping around her like a storm that finally found a place to land. For the first time, the danger between them didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like a home. And together, bloody, bruised, bound by something dark and consuming, they made the same unspoken, irrevocable choice. Whatever monsters they were becoming, they would become them together. They've chosen each other, and the danger that comes with it. But is this really where their story stops? Tell me, would you want a part 2? And what darkness do you expect the world to throw at them next? If you crave more of their twisted devotion, more of Caleb's possessiveness, more of Jasmine's rise into power, tap the subscribe button and turn on notification bell and be the first to know once the next story drops. This isn't just a love story, it's a war, and they're fighting it together.